Good afternoon and welcome to Grants 101 for Georgia's Local Officials, a 12-part webinar series brought to you by GMA and the Georgia Association of Regional Commissions. I'm Becky Taylor with the GMA staff, and before we begin today's event, just a reminder, you are participating in this webinar in listen-only mode. We encourage you to use the chat and Q&A functions in Zoom. If you would like to submit a question for the presenters, please just click on the Q&A button. If you would like to add a comment, please use the chat button. To access materials from today's webinar and past webinars, please click the link that we will drop into the chat, and you will also receive a follow-up email with the materials and more information. Without further ado, let's turn things over to Amanda Day and Kimberly Hayes-Demuga of Hayes Day Services. Take it away, Amanda and Kimberly.
Well, hello there. We're back again, and I want to just take a minute to say what we're going to talk about today is so important, and we're going to do our level best to also make it entertaining and educational. But as they say, it is what it is, because today we're talking about registering for federal grants. And I would like for you, if you're attending here, to just remember that we're not here to shoot the messenger. We're just here to learn about the myriad ways of registering for all sorts of federal grants. But seriously, these are essential steps. And whether it's been a while since you've applied for a federal grant, or maybe you've never applied for a federal grant, or you maybe are applying for a state grant that uses similar registration practices, we just thought it was a really important, whether it's new to you or review, just really important ground to cover today. And so we'll do our level best to keep it light and lively, but also to recognize it is what it is. And what we would like to do is a quick review. If you're new, welcome. If you were here for the very first one about BIL updates, welcome back. I'm Kimberly, and Amanda is my co-trainer. And we own Heyday Services. It's a training and keynote speaking company. And we also have a podcast together called Fundraising Heyday that we've had since 2018. And it's out and about wherever you catch your podcasts. And we are also grant professional certified, which means we sat for a credential many moons ago now that we renew every 3 years, that involves tracking our experience and also how we maintain professional development. So we've done a lot of training. We really both love to help folks connect to the information they need to get the money they need to do the good things. And as we move forward today, just a super quick review. I know we're working out a few technical questions, maybe Amanda, about some things in the chat and how to direct your chat and your Q&A. But a difference today from last week is that we really want to open up the chat. There are two of us. We'll do the very best we can. But we feel like the chat is going to be a great way for you to connect with us, where you're from, and also connect with fellow attendees, other folks who are on the call today, on the Zoom call with us. But also, we'd like to say, let's use the Q&A for like actual questions. So the chat, or chatting, because what a great name, and then the Q&A for maybe there's some detailed questions. If you have an experience experience registering or using Just Grants or some of our other lovely friends that we'll be talking about today, you can also put that in the chat, but we will really make it a priority to address those questions in the Q&A. Also, as a reminder, all the slides are going to be available through GMA, which again, we'd like to thank for helping us connect with y'all and get this information. This current presentation that we're doing is being recorded, and the recording will also be available through GMA. So I think that about gets it for our house rules.
It does. I will say, right now it looks like when you send the chats, it's only going to the panelists and hosts, which means it's going to Kimberly and I. And so nobody else can see it, although we can push stuff out to everyone. I've asked if the tech wizards on the back end can change that on the fly. I'm not sure if that's even possible with Zoom. If not, we'll get it fixed for next time. So it's yeah. So,
And Becky is actually saying there is an option to select everyone in the chat. Now, that's in the little blue bar with the little down facing fletch or arrow that you'll see in the box. I am seeing that when you click on that, you can choose everyone. And
I'm
so
not
I'm
sure
doing that
if
right
we're
now.
panel and host, sometimes we get magical powers. So I'm not sure
So if you visit that blue box, click and see if you see an option for everyone. And if you do see that option, check it. If that doesn't work, let us know in the Q&A and we'll work on it and get it fixed next time. So there some folks saying they don't see that option. So I would say we're just going to go over to Q&A and we'll fix it next time. How about that?
Yeah.
So as we move on to getting into the topic at hand, we're going to be talking about portals and portals and portals. Oh my. This is again is focused on federal applications. And we're going to be talking in the next a little bit less than an hour. We're going to be giving an overview. We're going to have screenshots. You're going to have a resource guide. We're going to give you all the resources, but we also know that in a little less than 1 hour, we can't go into every single facet and every single detail of every single one of these portals that we're going to be discussing, or these groups of portals. But we will be going over the System for Award Management, or SAM.gov, login.gov, where it's it can connect across these different systems in an effort to protect passwords and other security. We're going to be talking about grants.gov, which is sort of the hub of all or most things federal grants. And then we're going to be talking about some of the major agency portals. So you could go through the SAM.gov, login.gov, grants.gov, and still need to submit into another agency portal. And this is where I'm just going to say, I am sorry, but that is what it is. And we did not make the rules. Oddly, no one consulted Amanda or me when I know, right? When it came to setting these things up, because I wouldn't have chosen this path, yet this is the path we're on. So we're going to go into more details and again, screenshots, all sorts of tips for you. Please think of this as your resource guide that you can return to. There's a lot of information we need to cover today.
Yep. So you need to think about, the first thing is figuring out before you even think, hey, I'm going to go after, I found a grant, it's great, I'm going to go for it. Well, if it's a grant from a federal funder, you can't apply until you've actually made sure that your organization is registered. And everybody thinks they are, because at some point, in some way, somehow you may have been. But I'm telling you now, if you it wasn't you who checked 2 days ago, you're going to want to take the time before you do anything else. Like if I give you one assignment this week, it is go check and see if your agency's registration is up to date and current. And if it is, fabulous, you're ready to go. If it's not, we're going to walk you through how you make that happen, because it's not just, hey, I registered 20 years ago and we're good. There's registration, and then every year you have to renew everything. So it's not as simple as a one and done. So you need to think about if you're like, I don't even know, where do I start? Chances are someone in your finance department or maybe administration is probably the keeper of this information. So if I ever show up in a new city that I'm working with or a new county, that's the first thing I'll be like, let me talk to the admin and the county folk, the finance folks, and let's see if they've got anything that, oh yeah, here's our registration, here's our login. You also need to think about, when it comes to registration, how that's going to happen, right? So because you can do one registration for your entire organization, you could do multiple registrations, maybe one for each department. And I will tell you, if you are a smaller city, which basically the city of Atlanta, totally understand why they have multiple registrations. They're huge, right? Savannah probably has multiple registrations. Otherwise, I kind of recommend you have one, because you've got to keep up with all this stuff, and it is a pain. So I highly recommend you have one. I'll tell you my first horror story of ever really dealing with all of this. When I first started working for the city of Alpharetta, before I got there, they had no grants administrator. Every department had been doing their own thing, and they'd been doing a good job. They were getting grants and things were going well, but it was just starting to get so big. They needed someone to come in and kind of get things a little more streamlined. So I show up, and back in the day, the number you had to have to officially register, it was called a DUNS number, right? Dun & Bradstreet was the company that gave you that number. It's different now, and we will talk about that. But back in the day, it was the good old DUNS number. When I got there and thought, okay, I'm going to look up and see if my city's registered, Alpharetta had 13 DUNS numbers, and 13, some were registered, some were not, right? We didn't even have 13 departments, y'all. So I was like, how on earth? So I start digging in. I basically had to make a lot of phone calls to Dun & Bradstreet to start figuring out, because Dunn's numbers were tied to addresses. So some of them I can be like, yep, there's the police department. Yep, there's the fire station. Yep. But one of them was a Dunn's number because if you've ever been in the Alpharetta area, there's a huge park called Wills Park. And within Wills Park, there's a place called Wacky World, which is a fabulous playground for children. But Wacky World was built because citizens came together, raised some money, and they took like 3 days and built this incredible park. So the citizen who spearheaded that project, I don't think federal funds were attached, but somehow got a DUNS number associated with the city to help build Wacky World. I don't know the full story there, but like we did not need 13 DUNS numbers. So I went through the process of the one that was the main one connected to City Hall. I decided that was going to be our number for everything. Every other one, we decided to let them go dormant and go away. And so no matter whether you were the police, the fire, community development, parks and rec, I don't care who you are, if we were writing a grant on behalf of the city of Alpharetta as the lead applicant, we were using that one number. So all that to say is, if as you're doing your research, you realize we have a bunch of numbers, even if it's just two, you are allowed to consolidate and just get yourself down to one for your whole organization. And again, there may be some very legit reason, like a sheriff's department may be a separate entity. I mean, you may be connected to the county, but there is some separation because they've got an elected sheriff, you've got elected officials. That may make sense to have two different ones, right? So there can be reasons to have more than one, but I'm just saying if there's no legit reason other, I just want my own number, get yourself down to one, because you've got to track for every number you have, you've got to have the registrations current in all of these places, and you've got to have the logins, and you've got to have, we're going to tell you about all the different points of contacts and things that you have to fill out. Okay, so it's a headache to do it just for the one thing. So I recommend keeping it that way. As we're going through all of this and laying out how you can do all of these things, let me tell you, the entire process is absolutely free. It does not cost you anything to register. It doesn't cost you anything to renew it. Okay. Now, I will tell you, there are companies out there, you may have gotten letters from them and they try to scare you. You get a letter that's like, they'll look up and like, oh, their renewal is due in 3 months. So they'll send a letter saying, warning, you are about to lose your ability to apply for federal grants, and it will freak you out because you think, oh my gosh, what have we done? Well, really, they're just trying to get you to pay them for them to do the renewal for you. Okay. And certainly it's your prerogative. If you want to pass it off to somebody else, you have that ability. But I'm just telling you, it's not that difficult once we walk you through it. And once you've done it the first time, the renewals are pretty simple in the scheme of things. And so, don't feel like you have to pay anyone. You don't. It's free. You can do. If I figured it out, I promise you can figure it out as well. So the first place you want to register is SAM.gov. And as Kimberly said earlier, SAM stands for the System of Award Management. Okay. So this is a government-wide registry for organizations doing business with the federal government. So cities and counties and school systems. Contractors are also registering here. Okay. So like you think about if you've ever gotten a federal grant before and you've had to hire a contractor to do a portion of the work, they are probably a registered entity. Okay, so all kinds of people can register. And when Kimberly and I are talking about registration, we are talking about you registering your city or your county. Okay, or those of you who work for the Regional Development Center, your Regional Development Center is registered. Not a registration for you or for me, Amanda Day. I'm talking about you are registering your agency. Now you're going to be tied to that potentially, which we'll get to how that works in a minute. But we're talking about registering your agency as a whole. Okay. Grants.gov, which you've probably been familiar with that. That's where you can do grant research. That's where you can also apply for grants. A lot of federal agencies house their applications on there. Grants.gov uses SAM.gov to make sure that, yes, this is the right agency that is allowed to apply for this grant on behalf of whoever you're saying your applicant is. Okay. So that's why it's really important. You start with SAM.gov and you do that registration there. Again, once you register, your registrations have to be renewed annually. But I will tell you, it's not like, let's say your SAM.gov registration goes through on September 1st. Great. That means by next September 1st, you have to renew your registration. Let's say you renew it because you're like want to get things done. You renew it on August 1st. Well, then guess what? Next year, your registration is due by August 1st. It's not the same day every year. It's whatever day you renew it, it's 365 days to that date. So every time you renew a little bit earlier, hopefully, right? Even if it's a day or two, that's going to change that mark of the annual registration. So just be mindful of that. And what I would always do, I had a file in my desk that was marked sam.gov, grants.gov, but I kept all the paperwork. So I would print off the confirmation that I renewed. I would stick that in my folder in my desk, and I would go on my calendar. And about a month earlier, I'd set the reminder, it's time to renew your registration. You do get emails from them starting about 3 months out. But if you're like me, you get 1,000 emails and you look at me like, oh, I'll get to it. So I have that calendar reminder. So it's in my face that I've got to get this renewal done. And this was the one folder. I was the only person, the cities I worked for here in Georgia, I was the only grants person. Never had a big grants team. And so that was the one folder I always told my city manager, if Amanda wins the lottery and doesn't show up at work tomorrow, out of all the folders on my desk, this is the one you do not want to lose. And I make sure that they knew exactly where it was. Okay. So since I work for Alpharetta, I decided to pull up theirs. And let me tell you, I'm not connected with them anymore. Everything I'm showing you, anybody can look at. This is all public record. Okay. So there's nothing private. There's nothing fancy hidden behind here. So what I did is I logged on to sam.gov with my personal login. Okay. So if you ever want to poke around sam.gov just to look and see things, I didn't use a city or an organization. I created an individual account. It's free. Again, I don't have to share as much information. It's really just mostly setting up a password and information. And you can do searches, you can do all kinds of things. So you can see here, here's the city's UEI, or unique entity identifier. We'll go into a little bit more. It used to be the DUNS number. Now it's this number. So it's unique to each organization. You can see with this green, they're active. So yay to my old city for keeping I guess that folder has been passed on to the next person, right? Years later. And they have to renew it by April 17th of next year. So all is going well. Okay. You've got addresses, that information. And so this is giving you an idea when you register, this is the type of information that they're going to ask you about. Okay. They've got to be able to put this in here. Okay. So this account was originally created back in 2006. So they've been keeping it up since then. So they ask you about the start date of your entity. So if you're like, I have no idea what date my city or county was founded, I'm going to have to find that out when your fiscal year ends, things like that. They also ask about points of contact. Okay. And so Kimberly's going to be talking later about your electronic business point of contact and just those kinds of things. And so you just want to make sure that they're up to date. I can tell you I've survived through some people retiring and leaving. And so these are the people that are going to be able to give access to your system, which is going to be important. These are the people that are going to be able to make changes. And so you want to be aware of who is listed as your points of contact and your backups, because if one of them leaves, you really want them to change that information before they go, or you're hoping your backup is still around to change it, because otherwise it gets a lot harder to do. So you really want to pay attention as you're doing, don't just do your renewal and go, yep, we're good, because you could renew it 12 times and realize, man, our eBiz point of contact, that guy retired 12 years ago and nobody knows where he is anymore. So make sure you keep up with that. Okay, so we talked about your first job one this week is to go and see if we're registered. If you're not registered, okay, you're going to want to do this, and you get these slides. These have links anywhere we've got a thing. So this is the page on sam.gov where you want to go to register your entity. And the very first step is you're going to get your UEI, or your unique entity identifier. Okay, so it's a 12-character alphanumeric identifier. And this is what allows you to do business with the federal government. Okay. I have gotten my UEI for an organization in like a day before. I had a client who we put everything in correctly. Like I walked her through it, putting all her stuff in and uploading it. A week later, she got an error message saying, hey, something was off. we logged in, couldn't find, there was nothing flagged as an error. We ended up finally having to call SAM.gov. They have a contact number. It's like a 1-800 number basically you can call. And my advice to her, she needed to do it because I didn't work for that organization. My advice to her was do not get off the phone with them until the problem is resolved. Don't let them say, oh, do this and you'll be fine. Say, okay, hold with me. I'm going to do the thing and I'm going to resubmit. You let me know if it went through, because otherwise then you're stuck trying to call them again. Sometimes there's wait times to get to reach them. And so my advice here is don't be afraid to call them. That's what their people, that's their job, is to call and walk you through these things. Okay. So getting your UEI can be really quick, or it could potentially take you some time if everything you submit to them doesn't upload correctly, or if something comes back as an error.
Hey, Amanda, can I hop in just a second? That we've got a Q&A. You may know this right off the top of your head.
Okay.
The question is, how early will SAM.gov allow us to renew? 1 month, 1 week, or on the day? I think you can renew up to a month before, but I wanted to double check that with you.
You know, I don't know the actual date. They don't make you wait till the day of. And
No, I know
honestly, they
that.
start sending you reminders 3 months out. So you probably, the first reminder they send you, I think you can renew the second they remind you. So it may be as early as 3 months out. I don't know the exact day, but I will tell you, I'm one of those, as soon as they send it to me, if I have a second, I'm usually doing it right away too. So I think it may be about 2 or 3 months out that you can renew.
Just to reiterate, if you choose to renew it up to 3 months, and yeah, Patrick, I think I agree. I think it is 3 months. Know that it's 365 days then from the date of renewal. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you consistently renew 3 months ahead of time, it will, you'll cycle through a whole different set of dates.
You're renewing every 9 months then instead of every once a year, which is fine. It does, yeah. So
anyway, thanks for that. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks, y'all.
I appreciate that. So once you get your UEI and they confirm that, yep, this is, you've submitted your paperwork, so they'll give you your UEI number. And from there, you will start answering all the questions on the actual application. That it's basically like you're filling out a form with an application. They want you to designate an e-business point of contact. And like I said, we've got a future slide that explains what powers that person is given. A lot of times it's, when I was in Alpharetta, we always made it either someone in finance or someone in IT, because they're kind of the one controlling the account. So it made for, those are the two that made sense to us. But again, there's no rhyme or reason or rule on who has to be that person. It says in the process that it can take you up to 10 days to have your SAM.gov registration done. I think 10 days is being very generous. Can it be done in 10 days? Yes. Are most people going to tell you they did it in 10 days? No. Most people are probably saying it's going to could take up to a month or two. You'll submit stuff. You may get error messages back. It can take time to correct whatever those are, to figure out what those are. I've heard horror stories of it taking people 6 to 12 months to get it processed. Now, that's not the usual case. Okay. So I don't want anybody to be like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to wait 12 months. Chances are, if you stay on top of it, you can probably get it done in a couple of weeks. But just know that it's going to take you staying on top of it, filling everything out, hitting submit. Second you get a registration or a notice back, jumping right on and fixing that. And it also is you logging in occasionally too. If you haven't heard anything in a few days, you may want to log in and make sure there isn't any sort of message within the system. Okay. So sometimes you can't just sit back and wait for them to tell you. Okay. So before you can move on to grants.gov registration, you have to have your UEI, which you get through SAM.gov, and you have to have your SAM.gov registration complete. That is step one before you can even register with grants.gov. Someone says, I assume you can change that eBiz point of contact easily on the portal if there is a change. Yes. And again, it depends on if no one remembers their logins, and the only one who remembered their login was that eBiz point of contact and they're gone, then it's going to be very hard. I'm not saying impossible, but it's going to be harder to change that. Okay. So again, it goes back to making sure that everybody who's listed as either the eBiz, the main point of contact, or the backup, making sure they all remember their logins and you make changes before all of them are gone. Is my recommendation. Okay. So if you're the one in charge of the grants, like even though I was never the e-business point of contact as the grants administrator, I was still the one responsible for keeping it up to date. And so I knew who the points of contact were. So I knew if one of these people left, I was going to be on top of that. Okay. And again, just a reminder, we're talking about registering your city or your county, not you as the grants person or you as the city clerk who's suddenly now doing grants, which happens a lot of places, right? So just to make sure of that. Now, so that's if you're not registered. If you are registered, okay, you want to sign in. This is how you create your account personally for you to look. If you're like, I think we're registered. Okay, so if you have not individually created your sam.gov login, this is where you would go and do it. Okay, and like I said, this will just take you a few minutes. It doesn't take long to do. And then you can come to the search engine and you can look up and see if your organization is current, and you can see who your eBiz point of contact is. Okay. So you want to find it, you want to note your UEI. A lot of federal grant applications want to know what your UEI number is. I don't know about you, but there's no way I'm memorizing a 16-digit identifier. I'm not that good. So I keep it written down in kind of a secure, I mean, it's public information, so it's not like anybody can go and look up your UEI. So, but I always kept it written down, kept it handy. And so once you find it, you can see that. And then from there, you can move on to creating your grants.gov profile for your organization. Okay. Now, so if you want to, again, you're creating your individual thing, even though I'm a consultant now. So let's just say one of your organizations was like, hey, Amanda, we're going to hire you to write this grant for us. If it's a grants through federal or through grants.gov, you can give me permission in grants.gov to help work on your application processes. Okay. I won't have permission to change your eBiz points of contact. I won't have it permission to do a lot of things, but you can do that. So that's why if you are not the eBiz point of contact, you want to create, if you're the one writing the grants and being involved with the grants, you need to also create your own individual login for sam.gov, which will work across the platforms so that you can be tied to your organization's account so you can help with grant applications. So does that make sense? So you got your big citywide has to be logged in and renewed annually. And then you as an individual who's going to be involved with grants, you need your own personal login so you can be attached to that city or county. Right? Am I sound like I'm making sense? You might want to chat, want to give me a thumbs up or down, a yes or a no. We're about to move on to talk about grants.gov. So if there's, or maybe is there any Q&A there? Everybody's saying makes sense and thanks in the Q&A. So
awesome. Thank y'all.
okay. I'm trying to move to the next slide, Kimberly. There we go.
So, I got you. I know you will. So I am like, I'm in the controversial section of our presentation today, login.gov. So there are lots of things going on with login.gov right now. There are people really struggling with this. The connectivity is not happening as it should. One of our participants is like, would you please address this mess that is going on? And I would like to say, if I could wave a wand, I would do it for you. I know Amanda actually went in maybe 2 days ago and set up her, and again, this was her account, not an organizational account, okay? And she did it relatively easily, but before you throw virtual tomatoes at us for saying that, we acknowledge that it is not working out that way for everyone. And I would also back up and say, for many grant applications, but not all, and you'll know the difference because it will specify in your RFP or your NOFO, your instruction manual, right, for the federal grant, it's going to specify whether or not you have to use login.gov in the application process. If you are experiencing significant issues linking your login.gov account with your sam.gov account, it's supposed to be easy, but it is not easy for a lot of people right now. There are some troubleshooting. Login.gov, I would start there first, but also the issue could be if there are some older points of contact or other information in SAM.gov, and if the email information, like the primary point of contact in SAM.gov, is not the same as the one you're trying to link in login.gov, there will be drama. So it could be as simple as that, but I would start there to troubleshoot and see where that was. And I know that if there has been a lot of transition in your department or your office, the point of contact can be really the eBiz point of contact, kind of like the IT connection in your agency, right? The person that has all the magical powers when it comes to granting access. If that contact is old or that email is no longer matching, then that's where the problem is going to be. And Patrick is commenting that the application forms are on grants.gov, but they use their own portals. And Patrick, you're psychic, or you should play the lottery today, because we're going to be talking about that very thing toward the end of the presentation. So again, if you're able to set it up, the idea of login.gov is that it makes it easy to carry passwords across these different portals and to provide a measure of security. But the emails have got to be the same. And I think that's where a lot of the problems start when you're trying to link up these systems. Amanda, let me know if you're seeing anything else.
I do. So in the Q&A, we'll go there, and then there's something in the chat. So login.gov keeps losing my information and won't recognize my password. Even after one of their techs worked with me last month to fix it, it's messed up again this month. And my advice would be, because I mean, sadly, there's no easy answer for this. It's a new system. It's going to have bugs for a while. And for some people, it's going to work beautifully. And for others, you're the unlucky one. Like there's an e-newsletter Kimberly and I both sign up for. I get it every week. Kimberly gets it every third week. And
I've been a member of this organization for 15 years, and all of a sudden, I don't know.
My recommendation would be, I hope you document it, or at least know the date. Maybe you called them or something. I would call them again and say, look, this is what happened. This is how you fixed it. I don't know how you fixed it, but you fixed it before. It did the same thing again this month. Can you please fix it permanently?
Stay on the line until you get what you need to get.
But it sounds like it's like working in the immediate time, and then a month later it's not working. So I would try to have them fix it one more time, but I would document what all you've done, because if it happens again, the next time I'd call, I'd be like, this is happening every month. Can I talk to your boss? Like I would move it up the food chain. I mean, nicely, but you know, because the tech clearly isn't getting the job done. There's something a bigger problem, and it stinks because you're having to deal with this, and it's more hours that you probably don't have to give. And Kimberly's typing some more of an answer in the chat there, so, or in the Q&A. That'd be my advice. Kimberly, you may go about it a different way.
No, I'm just telling Vicki how sorry I am that she's going through that and how frustrating it is. And I would say to keep checking in. And I know it's another thing to add to your day, but to stay on it, because if they're requiring you, there are two things going on here. If they're requiring you for whichever grants you're looking at, they're requiring you to use your login.gov to access these other things. And again, you'll know that because you've read the grant instructions. If they're requiring and you've got to do it, then it's on the phone to figure it out. If you're on a deadline and you can't, and you can do a workaround by not using login.gov, get that grant out and then go back and solve the problem. I think that, and in the interest of time, I think we probably need to keep.
One other quick question that I can answer in like 2 seconds. So Joy asked about, I have to create my own personal login.gov account to link to the SAM.gov. So again, SAM.gov, you're going to have an account for your organization, your city or county. Then you personally are also going to create a SAM.gov account. It's a lot easier. It's really just a login that you're creating. So you can be attached through grants.gov to your city or county's or profile. Okay, so you're going to create your own personal one, and then you are going to go into login.gov with your personal SAM.gov stuff, and you're going to do that in login.gov. hopefully that makes sense.
So, and when we say personal, we mean your work email, your
Email,
individual
yes.
work email. And when we mean your organization, it's your government organization.
Mhm.
So let us know, Amanda, if you want to go on to the
Yep.
next slide, let us know. So what we have here is a screenshot. And again, we want you to use a lot of these slides for reference because we really want to make sure we get through grants.gov and some of those major agency portals. This is what login.gov looks like. Again, you're using your work email, right?
The
And
same one you use with sam.gov.
your work email that you use for sam.gov, you're using for login.gov, your work email. But then you need to register your government agency as its own entity in sam.gov, and then you can be connected to that agency. I hope that makes sense. And we did not create this. We're just trying to help you through it. We've all been there, but that is what it is. So you need to think when you're researching this and trying to figure out what's what, there must be an agency overall sort of umbrella organizational account in sam.gov that will qualify you to apply for grants. And then login.gov is supposed to be a way to make things easier for you to log in with your individual work email across multiple agencies. This is what it looks like. We know it's problematic. Grants.gov, however, in my experience, hasn't been as problematic. So we'll go to a happier place here for a moment and walk through the original. I'm not going to go into one of those. Back in the day, I had to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow. I'm not going to do that. But grants.gov is a big improvement over the way grants were submitted 15, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. It was originally purportedly going to be the central place where you would go for all things grants for your agency, right? It has evolved in a different direction, but grants.gov still plays a really important role. And indeed, sam.gov is sort of that clearinghouse registry for all vendors, all contractors, all entities that are somehow connected with government funding, including but not limited to grants, right? So that's the big clearinghouse, sam.gov. Grants.gov is in its name. That's where you're going to register if you are wanting to apply for federal grants. Now, I say that, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. Grants.gov is sort of the central hub. Some of your larger federal agencies have their own hubs. Why? I don't know. I just know that they're there, and we're going to help you figure out how to navigate that. But that is where we are with this. You might remember when I first started out today, I'm like, let's don't shoot the messenger. So I know it's frustrating, but we just want to give you all the information so that you can work through it. Again, it's super important when we're talking about registering your organization, right? Not you, the person that has to get grants out on top of everything else you're doing every day. The agency, the city, the municipality. We're hoping you have either one unique entity identifier number in sam.gov, or at least just only a small amount. You have to use the same email address across these different agencies for your umbrella registry with your organization. I'll keep saying that a couple of times, but the email address, the phone number, it all has to match, because there's not a person that's looking at these documents and can go, oh, well, that city, they're just in a building next door to the other building that's in the original address. It's all done by algorithms matching data. So if the data is different, that can be a problem. What you want to do in grants.gov is set up an account. Now, you can also, using your individual email address from work or your personal email, if you're so inclined, you can set up an account in grants.gov to search for grants themselves, to have push emails and notifications sent to you. And we're going to be talking about that kind of thing in a different webinar a little later on down the road. But for right now, we just want to focus on getting you registered in grants.gov. So we have a couple, I think we might have time for a couple of screenshots. So again, I want to take a quick minute here in the interest of time to reiterate whether or not you are performing that eBiz point of contact role. And if you are a city clerk or you are an officer or you're a first responder who's been given, hey, you're also our grant writer now, you may not be the person that holds the overall organizational registry, right, across SAM.gov and grants.gov, but you got to know who is, and the person who is has to be updated so that they can get you in. It's like getting invited to an exclusive club. You have to know somebody. You have to have that invite. If you're all new to this and you're setting this up, take some time to think through who is the best person to serve in each of these roles. And then, as Amanda said, maintain a file that's listing who is who and who has what kind of access. Very quickly, you can have, so the eBiz point of contact, eBiz is their words, not mine. The eBiz point of contact is sort of the overarching administrator, right? You can assign someone as an AOR or assigned operational role who can submit applications on behalf of the organization. That's usually not the same person as the eBiz POC, right? Could be someone like you. You can also have an AOR with expanded roles. It's making me think of the comment we got a couple of minutes ago about, so it should be really easy to change these POC contacts and all this, right? Maybe, but there are different levels of access where you might want to think about who is the best fit. And it may be the person writing the grant. It may be the person who's the head of finance. It's a decision that you need to come to, but establishing those roles. And then can also be, so that's like the overall registration in grants.gov. Then within grants.gov, you can think of each application as its own workspace, if that makes sense. And you can have a manager of that workspace. So overall registration, sam.gov, grants.gov. Workspace within grants.gov, that is where you're doing the work of getting those applications loaded into the portal. And we have a note down here that that's a great role for whoever is driving that grant forward, whoever is researching, writing, and perhaps is going to be managing that grant. If they're the workspace manager of that particular application, that would be a great place to start. Amanda, could we, in the interest of time, do we want to just go ahead and look at some screenshots?
Yep.
So grants.gov, this is what it looks like when you open it. You look up to the far right of your screen. Amanda has very helpfully added a little place to show you where you can register. It's located right next to the button where you would log in. A quick commercial before we go on to the next slide. Grants.gov is also a treasure trove of all sorts of videos and posts and things about registering. We're covering something in an hour. You can go and find hours worth of content to help you through that. I have found that their support department is pretty good most of the time to get those questions answered. So if we move on to the next slide,
Went too far.
we may have skipped. We'll try it again. We're gonna, the next slide, here we go. This is actually a pretty good video to help you through if you've never registered before. Again, brand new, haven't done it before, or everything's expired. So basically you have to re-register and start the whole shooting match over. This is a great place to go. And these links will be here in this presentation and also in the resource guide that we're handing out. So we'll just move on to the next slide and look at, this is of grants.gov registration. I want to call your attention to, and again, we'll be talking in depth about this in a future video with you. But if you subscribe to grants.gov alerts and grants.gov newsletter, who wants their inbox full of all sorts of stuff they never read? This is actually stuff that could help you out if you're in a jam, or it's been a while, or you're feeling a little rusty, or you're brand new to the process. Overall, I'm like, grants.gov, they do a pretty good job of helping you through the process. And if we want to go on to the next slide, that's a little bit more of what it looks like when you start to set up your workspace. So things, as you see, things are pretty clearly labeled. Things are fairly straightforward. For me, either for me working with a client or in my own personal experience as an employee, the more time you take up front to double check all these things, even when there's not a grant on the horizon for you, the better off you're going to be, because no one needs the pressure of having the grant is due in 10 days and you're just now figuring out that whoever was the point of contact retired 2 years ago and now you've got to go in and find. That's not the time. If you do nothing else once you have participated in this webinar, if you just check and buddy up with the person who is the point of contact, see who's holding the keys to the kingdom, and make sure that everything is up to date, then that will be a win for you. Because the submission process of a grant, and we're just talking about registering today, but the grant submission process, gathering information, getting things through portals can be interesting enough without having to do all this admin work. So that being said, if there are, it doesn't look like there's anything in the Q&A and chat. Amanda, I'd like for us, in the interest of time, to go ahead and move on to agency portals, but also this is, and if you're, I know this doesn't apply to Vicki, and Vicki, I am sorry, but if your login stuff is working, this is where you would go to connect login.gov and grants.gov. And again, all of this will be on the slides that you'll have access to and the handouts. So
we do have a question. Can
okay.
you clarify that there is or is not an individual account registration for grants.gov?
So there is an individual grants account. Yes. Big organization registration, right? Well, if you only register your organization, who's going to do the work of submitting the grants? The person who, or the people who are registered either as the AORs or the workplace managers. So you need to have both registered to put a grant through in its workspace in grants.gov. So I hope that clarifies it.
Well, and I can kind of walk you through, this might be helpful. So I cannot stress enough that who you designate as your eBiz point of contact, this is the person with the power. Okay, so number one, you want to make sure that they know that they are registered. Because I worked with a client where I needed access to be able to log in and do things. And there's a way to, when you find the grant you're working on, there's a way to try to attach yourself to an organization, and the eBiz point of contact should get an email and they can either approve or deny that, right? A week goes by and he never did anything, or the client never did anything. So I'm calling going, hey, your eBiz, well, we don't even know who our eBiz point of contact is. So I look it up. I'm like, it is your IT director. So he needs to go. He swore up and down. He's like, I never did that. And I'm like, you may not have, sir, but someone designated you the eBiz point of contact. So it's you. And we finally had, he was just, the emails meant nothing to him. So he was just deleting them because he didn't know the context of it. So it's important that whoever it is knows that they are, knows to look out for those things. Because when you're applying for a grant, a lot of grant applications are housed in grants.gov. So that's where the application portal is. And whether you're hiring a consultant or whether a staff member is the one literally logging into that grant application portal and is going to be the one typing the words, uploading the attachments, they need permission to do that. So you'll have your city's registration with your eBiz point of contact, and then whoever else you want to have permission, whether you're giving them permission to be able to submit grants or just permission to work on one particular grant application. eBiz point of contact gives that login. This is my email address, this is my login. You'll log in and they can give you permission to access the city's stuff. Is that, I know it's a little bit convoluted, but that's kind of how, yes.
So I'm typing this,
here,
and I'm typing this into the Q&A too to try and.
yes. Patrick is saying the eBiz point of contact authorizes RCs or your employees or consultants to work with community. So your regional Development Center. So Patrick's right. A lot of you may get grant resource help from your regional development center. They may be helping write grants for you. You've got to be able to give them permission to do that. Otherwise, I mean, it's for your protection, because you don't want some random person to be able to go in and be like, I'm writing a grant for the city of Dublin and they're asking for $8 million to do X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh no, we didn't do that. So it's a layer of protection to make sure not just anybody can submit grants on your behalf. So it really is locked down tight
Yeah, it is.
for that to be safe, which is what you want. But it can be a thing. And again, this is just important. Even if you are registered with grants.gov, if the grant comes out today and you've got 30 days to submit it, if you're not an authorized user yet, and your eBiz point of contact is on vacation or doesn't know how to do it, that could delay you a week from starting. So it's a thing. We've
So
got another
Julie-
question.
Julie's asking, and I'm typing up
Yeah.
something right quick now. Can the eBiz point of contact send an invitation to those that she or he would authorize to be able to submit a grant? And they can designate,
Yes.
it's a designation. It's not like getting an invite to Zoom or something like that. I'm not making light of the question. It's they go in and designate, and the designees need to already be registered and have accounts with their individual work emails within grants.gov. So you can see why that would be important.
Very good.
And let's see. I want to see what I think that's everything.
And I would say too, if well, everybody, no matter where you're located within a regional development commission. There's regions across the state. And so Patrick, I don't want to like pass work your way. But I'm assuming if you're having all kinds of issues, I'm guessing the folks that work for the RDC probably have done this a time or two. They may be able to spend 5 or 10 minutes and give you some advice on how to do that. I will tell you that's something I would have done if I was having issues getting to grants.gov or sam.gov. Phone a friend is my number one resource. If I can't figure something out, I'm calling Kimberly or another great person. So your RDCs are a great, yeah, he's saying absolutely. They're great wealth of information. And I say that because I know I've gone to I'm in the Atlanta Regional Commission. I don't know how many times I've gone to them for issues when I've needed help, because that's what they're there for. They want their cities and counties to thrive. So don't be afraid to ask them for help too.
So we're here to wrap this up in about 8 minutes. So we are gonna boom into agency portals.
Yes.
And
so some funders have their own, right? So you may have to, maybe a yes and. You may have to submit in grants.gov and the funders portal. You may have to submit something in both places. They could have different deadlines. One could be due a week before the other one. It happens. Sometimes it's only in their system and not in grants.gov. Okay. And so it just depends from funder to funder if they are going to have their own portal. So when you get the grant guidelines, sometimes it's called the RFP or the NOFA or the FOA or all those different acronyms that basically means, hey, we got a grant coming out. Here's where you apply. Here's what you submit. Here's the deadline. Here's all the info you need to know. Within that set of guidelines, they're going to tell you, this is how you submit an application to us. And they're going to give you the links to whether it's their portal, grants.gov, or both. Okay, so you want to make sure you read that very carefully, because that means you're going to have to be able to log into their systems. Now, I will tell you, their login process should not, unless there's something crazy going on, you should be able to create a login probably within 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, so it's not, and it's a login with your work email address, and you want to attach it with your organization. So again, mileage varies on each of their processes. Okay. And I just have to give you an example, because again, every agency could have this. I'm guessing a lot of you probably been involved with Department of Justice grants for your police department. So a couple of years ago, Just Grants was created. This is a fairly new portal for grants, let me say the word right, specifically for like the COPS, community-oriented policing services, to go through this portal. We can give out a little love. I think there may be a special place in heaven for people who had to do this the first couple of years, because they ended up extending the deadline by a week or two because the portal system was having so many issues because it was brand new. So if that was you, much love to you. I'm glad you made it out the other side alive. But this is just one Department of Justice portal, right? If you've ever applied for the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program, they have their own program. So this is a portal for one grant program only, Bulletproof Vests. That's it. No other process. Okay. So just so you know, it's not like, oh, Department of Ed has its own portal. They probably have 12,000 portals. Who knows? So sometimes it's funded, sometimes it's tied to a specific type of grants, sometimes it's a portal just for one specific grant. So as you can imagine, you're starting to get a lot of different logins and passwords, and it's just something else for you to keep up with. Because again, when you're under the gun on a deadline, you don't want to have to spend 4 days trying to recover your password to get logged into the system to get the grant submitted.
And we'd also just like to say again, we're not in favor of this level of complexity and complication,
No.
but that's what it is.
Nope.
So we were, and to sort of sum up, checking those things now, again, even if there's not a grant in the clear blue sky for you, getting on top of those. But when a new grant opportunity comes out, the faster you can get it, the more time you have to make sure, if it's that Bulletproof Vest, or if it's Just Grants, or if it's HHS has their own, Department of Energy has its own for different things. Understanding the complexity of that now will not only help you get ahead of the curve when you're applying for grants, it will also, if you are being voluntold to write grants as a part of everything else that's going on, it's a way to also get a much better estimation on the amount of time it takes and the team of people who might need to come together to make sure that all these registrations are in and stay up to date. It's not just, oh, you're the grant writer, you need to figure all this out. If nothing else, I think today we've gone and shown you that it takes a level of cooperation and readiness and communication to make these things happen in the registration process. You can go in grants.gov, and again, as you can do this individually. I could do this, I could make up a Gmail account right now and go into registergrants.gov, and you can get opportunities every day for all the new grant opportunities that are released that day. You can just get that email. That's one way to stay abreast. And again, we're going to do an entire webinar on this in the future, but I advise you, if you know the big agencies and your project priorities and how they line up to those big agencies, go ahead now and subscribe to daily emails from grants.gov. Go ahead and make sure that you are checking in at GMA and their website for their BIL updates and their grants for all seasons. Go ahead and go to the DOJ, the DOE, or the ODODO, whatever acronym you need, and sign up for those emails so that you're not caught off guard when new grant opportunities go out. But finally, I would say, as we move more toward closing in our resource guide for this hour, I would just say it really behooves you now to stop and check now. Who holds the registration? Who is your eBiz POC? Because if it isn't you, and it could be someone who is like, I don't know why I'm getting these emails, and they could just be deleting them because they've got a million things on their plate. But it is frustrating when that happens, but the federal agency is not going to be able to help you untangle that bit. That's something that I would just urge you to take on now. And in the resource guide that GMA is going to provide you, it's just a couple of pages with some links to some reliable government-based information that you can research, that is free, that will help you navigate this often complex world of registering for a federal grant. The good news is, once you've done it, you can have a better handle on it. But keeping those, understanding that there's multi-levels of registration and having a safe place to keep all those registration information is really going to be something that's going to be your friend.
Yeah. And I want to real quick, acronyms, and we work with a lot of states and everybody calls it different. I meant Georgia Regional Commissions is what, if I had the acronym or had extra words in there, that's the group I was talking about. That's a good resource to help with all of this.
So we're just really thrilled that you could join us today. Drop us a line at hello@heydayservices.com. I would also, I can't speak highly enough of GMA for the work that they put into providing those grant support services. Really check them out as well. And we will be back. I know it's the top of the hour, but we'll be coming back with more webinars and information to just help you navigate this process, but more importantly, to get you the money to do those good things. So thanks so much for joining us today, and we will see you soon.